Look, Gail. The mirror's moving.
Gail!
Stand back, Gail.
You can't come out! The killer's down! Free! I'm the killer!
Gail, cover!
Hi everyone, I'm Dom Griffin. I'm a film critic, and you are watching the Armchair Auteur. This is an ongoing video series where I like to talk about old films, new films, reviews, analysis, that sort of thing. If you're a big movie person, if you love film, please consider subscribing. Today, we're going to be talking about the Scream franchise. Sort of, mostly. This is a continuation of our month-long theme, the sort of Spooptoberfest thing we're doing, where every video on the channel this month is horror-themed. Now, I do have to preface this by saying that we will have a couple of movies before the month is out that are not horror-themed. Just a couple of things that came up where I was like, oh, I should review this. They don't as if fit the theme, but like we're gonna put it out anyway. So just like be on alert for that. If you're already subscribed, hit the little bell icon so you get notifications when I put out new videos, because I will be putting out multiple new videos over the next few days. That said, Scream. The Scream franchise is one of my favorite horror movie franchises. I am not as dyed-in-the-wool horror fanatic as a lot of my friends and colleagues and things of that nature, but I do love the Scream series very, very, very much. I love Wes Craven. I think it's one of his greatest achievements, the franchise, and I just think these movies are fantastic. The main thing about the Scream movies that works so well for me is that they are slasher movies, but they are slasher movies that specifically work within sort of the whodunit genre, where there's a masked killer going around killing people, but much of the actual mystique of the movie is trying to figure out who the killer is, and there's actually a functioning mystery underneath all of the gore and teen stuff. I truly love this specific approach to the genre because screenwriter Kevin Williamson, who wrote most of the series and also like Dawson's Creek and some other things, has such a specific penchant for writing things for 30-year-old actors to play teenagers who talk like 30-year-old actors and who are very erudite and make all these clever references and stuff. Like, it's a very specific type of thing that is very cloying, I think, when other writers do it. But Williamson is smart in the sense that underneath all of that aesthetic, those like little trappings, he has written a very bedrock solid whodunit. Like, the actual mystery stuff within the Scream movies works really well on repeat viewings. Like, there's never weird logic bubbles or problems. Like, they are fully functioning murder mysteries that also happen to have teenagers getting stabbed and references to John Carpenter movies. They're essentially like giallo mysteries, only like they make sense and like they're better and like they're not as colorful and there's like no goblin music. Like, that's the only difference. Wes Craven adapts these scripts with a much more realistic approach, not as much heavy-handed camera work, not as much stylization. Like, it's a very believable sort of Everytown USA vibe with like real mystery underpinnings. As far as the entire franchise goes, the first Scream movie to me is perfect. It's an unassailable classic. It's one of easily Wes Craven's top 5 films. It functions incredibly well. There's like nothing bad I can say about it. Neve Campbell's central performance as Sydney, the final girl, is gone through this huge ringer throughout the film. So many things happen to her. There's so many smart swerves and twists that all feel believable and all still work on repeat viewings. Even though you know they're coming, they still really get you. That's like the mark of like real quality filmmaking, in my opinion. Scream 2 similarly is very good. It's a little bit funnier. It's a little bit like cleverer than now at times, but it really smartly iterates on all the ideas of the first film and at the same time playing up sort of like sequel tropes and that sort of culture and being self-aware about the sense of the story continuing, but at the same time still telling like a really powerful story about Sydney and her ongoing evolution with her own trauma.
He's such a nice boy too. He's bright and funny and handsome, decent singing voice, and he was gonna be a doctor. This was just the kind of boy you'd like to take home to mom if you had a mom.
Fuck you!
It's like a really like kind of goofy, a little bit weirder version of the first movie, but it still works very well. Like, the kill reveals are great, the set pieces are great, everything about it is like equally fantastic. Not quite as good as the first Scream, but a lot closer than most sequels get. Like, really fantastic movie. So much so that Wes Craven and Williamson are able to reinvent the franchise entirely by the time they get to Scream 4, taking the same movie, the same ideas, the same concepts, and sort of inverting them on their heads, making them like this dirty mirror recreation for new audiences, like a new social media savvy millennial culture viewership that really should not have worked. Like, so many weird things happened in the horror boom by the time that Scream 4 happened, that Scream 4 should be a piece of shit that says, hey, let's leave this franchise at the dry. But it's almost as good as 1 and 2. It's probably a little bit better than 2. It's a fantastic movie. And my only gripes with Scream 4, honestly, are just that I think that the ending of the movie should have been slightly different, and we should have had a new trilogy following Emma Roberts' character, but like, that's a whole other video. So obviously I'm not getting too deep into like all the spoilers and specific lore of all the movies, but 1, 2, and 4 are really incredible movies. Like, 1 is great, 2 is a little bit less good, and then 4 is like almost as good as the first one. Like, this is like, that's like unprecedented, I think, in a lot of these kinds of films. But what about Scream 3? Scream 3 is inarguably the worst of the franchise. It's not even like a debate. Like, this could have been a listicle video, and it would have been a waste of time because everyone would have known I was going to pick Scream 3 to be the worst. That's like a given. But what is so different about Scream 3 that it doesn't function as well? What exactly is wrong with this movie? Aside from, of course, the incongruously brilliant soundtrack. One of the things about the Scream franchise that I think gets a little bit overlooked in analysis of it is that aside from all the movie references and self-aware, postmodern horror stuff, each of the other 3 Scream films are all in some way, shape, or form a commentary on the world that was born out of the O.J. Simpson trial, the world of reality TV culture and celeb culture and daytime talk show trash culture and this weird warping of the nation that came after that happened. Each of these other films has characters whose killers are in some way, shape, or form driven by a quest for fame. Like, they want to become famous for what they have done, and they don't care how many people have to die for it to happen. And then all the other characters that aren't the killers all talk sort of like daytime talk show hosts. Like, they all are like, TV commentators on the world around them. They're very self-aware. They're aware of what's going on. They get the sense that all of the world is turned up by media and that you're always being watched and everything that happens is in the context of a larger story or narrative. It's very odd, but it works from the way that Williamson writes the characters.
But she realizes that teen suicide is out this year, and homicide is a much healthier therapeutic expression.
Where do you get this shit?
Ricky Lake.
It's one of the reasons why this franchise is basically the most iconic horror movie franchise in a post-Quentin Tarantino world, because it gets that meta sense of self-awareness and makes it believable and palpable in a way that other films that pretend to be like this just don't. But Scream 3 is different. Scream 3 sort of sidesteps that entire cultural commentary and doesn't really engage with it in the same way, and instead goes in a completely different direction. Scream 3 sort of replaces that meta commentary with like an overly complicated murder mystery that relies extremely heavily on unbelievable retcons, on regurgitating and recontextualizing mythology from the first film, and having a final reveal that is literally just a slap in the face and doesn't make any sense upon rewatches or early watches or anything. A side note, like, my mother is like really good at guessing the killer in movies. Like, as long as I've been alive, we watch movies that had a mystery killer. Within 7 minutes of screen time, she would figure it out and she would always be correct. The one time I ever caught her and she was incorrect, she made me look the movie up, and when I looked it up, I found out that the killer that she had guessed was the original ending for the movie, but they like changed it in post and shot a new ending, and like that's the only time she's been like wrong. It's weird. But the only other time she was wrong was when the two of us watched Scream 3 together and the killer did not turn out to be Patrick Dempsey's cop character. I understand that going with Patrick Dempsey's cop character as a killer would have been very obvious because he's like the broad red herring piece of the movie, but also would have made more sense and would have been a better movie because Scott Foley is terrible, and that's my rant. But obviously in the final reveal, they go with the killer who is more thematically in tune to the movie's approach of being a meta commentary in a movie within a movie universe deal. See, after Scream 1 and 2 were so popular, the Scary Movie franchise that the Wayans did that like lampooned all of the relevant horror movies of the time really handicapped the Scream franchise. Like, they lampooned and parodied those movies to the point that iterating on the original concepts of those first 2 movies a third time like just wouldn't work. Like, audiences were so inured to like what was happening that it was just, not a viable option at all. Continuing to do these same things would not work, especially with Kevin Williamson being replaced by screenwriter Aaron Kruger, who's just like less clever and like less good at this specific type of thing. They had to do something different. Now, with the original concept being watered down to the point of being useless and essentially untenable, Wes Craven had like one major card up his sleeve. The last time he was involved with the franchise, it started off scary and groundbreaking and then was made inert by popular culture. He made New Nightmare, which was a meta-commentary movie that reinvents the entire Nightmare on Elm Street series by bringing Freddy Krueger kicking and screaming into the real world in a way that makes him scary and primal and interesting again, and making the entire movie about making an Nightmare on Elm Street movie. Like, it's a very like sort of ahead of its time concept, and like it doesn't always work perfectly, but Craven really knocked it out of the park, and it's the only Nightmare on Elm Street movie other than the first film and like maybe like parts of Dream Warriors, I guess, that really feels special. Okay, so clearly he kind of thought, all right, well, I did that with Freddy, I can just do that with the Ghostface Killer, it'll be great. But the problem is that the approach doesn't transfer over one-to-one. This isn't a movie where like they really step into our reality and it gives the killer like more power or more believability. It's a point where they focus on the world within a world. Like in the Scream films, they have the series of films called the Stab series, and it's like in the world of Scream, these are the movies based on what happens in Scream. So Scream 3 is entirely about the making of Stab 3, which is like the first time where they're actually just making stuff up in these movies because these events haven't happened yet. So you get this like really convoluted movie within a movie structure where like the characters playing the original characters in the movie are getting picked off and blah blah blah, and like it kind of works because the new cast members are like all entertaining and funny, but it's so removed from what makes the first two films work. By going back to the well here, Craven isn't able to make the Ghostface killer scarier again because everything involving the character and the approach to the suspense is mixed up in all these inside baseball gags about Hollywood stuff, complicating the Ghostface imagery with all these like dreams about Sidney's dead mother and stuff, and then also adding in this weird complication of the killer having the voice changer that makes him sound like other characters in the movie. Like, it's just too much. It's very hat in a hat, and it doesn't make the character scarier, it makes him more inscrutable and quite frankly more annoying. Honestly, one of the only sequences that is able to leverage this movie within a movie Hollywood commentary structure is one sequence in particular where the cast of Stab 3 and the main character, Gale, Dewey, those characters are all together, huddled up in a house in the dark, being faxed individual script pages from Stab 3 that also are commentary on what's happening to them right this minute. And it's like this really like kind of suspenseful but like a little bit comical take, and it sort of has a mirror into the way the script plays into the narrative in New Nightmare. Like, it's kind of a comparison thing. It's pretty funny, but ultimately the sequence ends with the house exploding. The killer literally kills one of the characters by blowing up a house, and it's so unrelated to the way the Scream franchise works that it just really takes you out of it. Like, yeah, you're upping the ante, yeah, it's like over the top, but it's over the top in a way that like ruins what works about the other films. But as much as I hate on Scream 3, and as much as anyone else who likes the Scream movies kind of hates on it, there are so many little elements of it that make it really fun and enjoyable, and it's like, even though it's the worst of the Scream movies, it's still a movie I genuinely like. It's not like something I dread rewatching or something like that. Like, it doesn't work, but it kind of does work, and it kind of is like a sweet little thing. Part of that is like all the bit players. Like, there's so many random people in this movie who only have a few lines, but their lines are all killer and amazing. Like, Patrick Dempsey's cop character's partner is like really funny.
He was making a movie called Stab. He was stabbed.
Patrick Warburton shows up as a bodyguard, and like he steals all the scenes he's in.
I'm the professional celebrity guard here. My resume lists Julia Roberts, Salman Rushdie, Posh Spice. You are the Hollywood hanger-oner, because you're just no good as a cop anymore. Your resume reads like the obituaries.
And of course, if we're going to talk about supporting characters who steal the movie, we have to talk about Parker Posey. By this point in the Scream films, the subplot involving David Arquette's character Dewey and Courtney Cox's character Gale Weathers, the reporter, and their on-again, off-again relationship, that entire thing has just run out of steam. Like, to be honest, if I was involved in these movies, I would have found a way to kill both of them off and just move on with new people and Sidney, the only like actual mainstay. However, they're like an integral part of the franchise, and a lot of other people like them, and like they stick around. The only way that their dynamic and their plot is made interesting in this movie is that it becomes a love triangle between Dewey, his ex, Gale, and Parker Posey's character, an actress who has been playing Gale Weathers in all the Stab movies. The fact that in this story, David Arquette leaves Courtney Cox, or is left by Courtney Cox, and starts dating someone that is supposed to be sort of an impersonator of her is really funny, because in real life, when they got divorced, David Arquette remarried a woman that looks like a young Courtney Cox. So that always tickles me when I rewatch the movie now. But also, it gives them like something to genuinely do, because otherwise, every time it cuts to their part of the story, you just don't care. Like, they're not Sidney, they're not these funny new people, they're just there. And like, they're only kind of still a couple in these stories because they were a couple in real life, and it just doesn't make sense that nobody cares. Parker Posey as this crazy actress who's like playing Gale, and in some ways is more Gale than Gale, is really entertaining, and every scene she's in is fantastic. She just steals. This is easily Parker Posey's best performance, bar maybe like Josie and the Pussycats, or like the air raid scene from Dazed and Confused. Like, she's great, and honestly worth the price of admission alone. So the thing about Scream 3 as an outlier is that obviously there's a lot to learn from it about what they didn't get right, how far they steered away from the original franchise's ideas, and what parts of it still worked in spite of itself. So we have a new movie coming out. There's going to be a Scream 5. It's going to be directed by the guys who made that movie Ready or Not, and most of the original cast is coming back with a couple of new additions. And this is going to be the first Scream movie that doesn't involve Wes Craven, because he's passed, R.I.P. Wes the God. And it is not going to be written by Kruger or Williamson. Like, neither one of them is writing. I think Williamson's producing. So this is going to be the first Scream movie in the franchise entirely created by a brand new creative team. So I'm kind of curious to see what happens, honestly. Like, I wish Wes Craven was still alive. That would be tight. He's not. I do wish Williamson was writing himself. He's not. It's being covered by a guy named James Vanderbilt, who, as some of you will know, wrote David Fincher's Zodiac, but as some of you will also know, also wrote The Sandman's Murder Mystery. So who knows? But the one thing I truly hope about this new movie that I'm very excited about and I hope is good is that they have watched Scream 3 as many times as I have, and they can learn about what works within the franchise and, honest to God, what doesn't. but we'll see. Those are my thoughts on Scream 3 and the Scream movies. I love the Scream movies. If you have not watched all of them, you should. If you have watched all of them, you should again. It's that time of the year. If you're going to be watching horror movies, they're really, really fun and I think sort of essential viewing. We will have more spooky content over the next couple of days and, as I said, a review or two that is not spooky, that is not Halloween based, because there are some films coming up that I promised to review that I forgot were coming out. It happens. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you have any commentary to share about your feelings about the Scream films or how much you miss Wes Craven, please put them in the comments below. If you have not subscribed, please consider subscribing. And if you have subscribed, hit the little bell icon to get notifications for new videos are coming out. Thank you guys for watching. I hope everybody's staying safe and being good to themselves. Bye.